Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by husky, hairy, huggable homos who love film to dish up some movie news and chat about a film, either current or classic. And as usual, I'm joined by two of my favorite people in the whole wide world slash universe slash multiverse slash creation, whatever you want to call it. Jim Pugliafico is with us. Welcome to the show, babe.
Thanks, babe, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis is here as well. Welcome, Will. Hey.
Hey, Brad and Jim. Long time no see.
I know.
Well,
wow,
we're going to be
at least, 19 hours or something.
I know. Well, we're going to be talking about the new All Monsters Attack film Rampage, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, based on the 80s arcade game that many of you may be familiar with. Not sure if you guys had a chance to see it over the weekend, but definitely going to be a big part of the discussion this week. We're also going to be dishing up some movie news and some plugs you won't want to miss. We got a lot to talk about, but before we do, Will, as Jim already alluded, you were just in Tucson a scant few hours ago before you got on a plane back to Austin. It was so great being able to see Rampage with you in person and hang out yesterday.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I just got back into Austin like 3 hours ago. So I'm still, my suitcase is still packed. Everything is still there. I have not gotten cozy yet, but it was absolutely great seeing the two of you this weekend. It was nice. We went out to the movie theater there in Tucson, caught Rampage together on one of those giant XD screens, which was, it's a fun way to watch a big action film. And of course, with flanked by two of my absolute favorite movie companions in the world, I think made the experience all the better.
Yeah, it was really kind of like a surprise visit, I guess you could say, and so it was great to see you. And of course, the first thing we think of is we want to catch a movie. And it must be a weird feeling for you now to be like just getting home to Austin. Like you saw us it must feel like you were just with us in Tucson, and now you're home in Austin and seeing us again via the magic of the internet. It's weird.
This week's been an absolute crazy blur. Last week, after we got done recording our review of A Quiet Place, which listeners can find on YouTube and iTunes, as soon as I got done, I went to sleep, woke up at 3 o'clock the next morning, flew to Cleveland for a work thing, flew home, and immediately jumped on a plane for Tucson. So I've had less than 24 hours of time in my own house since we last recorded, actually. So as I'm looking forward to us talking movies today so much. I miss the two of you already. I'm also very much looking forward to sleeping in my own bed tonight. That's going to be awesome.
Surrounded by Wiggles and the pups.
Wiggles and the pups. Yes, my boyfriend and my doggies. Oh.
Aww. Well, glad you made it back home safely, but we do miss you already, especially after just seeing you a few weeks ago for South by Southwest. It's, I think we're getting a little spoiled getting to spend so much time with you in person, Will. So,
and I think there's going to be at least one more Movie Bears podcast IRL crossover this year at some point or another. So we'll keep people posted as we figure that out.
Indeed,
hope so. At least one more.
Maybe more. We shall see. Well, guys, we got a big show tonight. How do you feel about getting things rocking and rolling with a little bit of movie news?
Roar! Yeah, let's do it.
Do it.
All right. Well, then here we go. Some movie news. Hey, it looks like we've got a bunch of people who jumped on and are hanging out with us live tonight. Cool. Yeah, welcome everybody. Glad to see you. Be sure to drop a hello in that live chat. Sometimes that live chat moves kind of quick. We can't always keep up with it, but we do love hearing from you guys. So be sure to utilize that. Jim, why don't you go ahead and kick this little segment off where we like to tell people what we're excited about going on in the film world right now. What have you got this week?
Man, it's been a really quiet week news-wise. There's been, unfortunately, as usual, there's been some notable departures. Milos Forman, director, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, unfortunately passed this week. We just today heard the news of help me out with his first
Harry
name.
Anderson.
Harry Anderson from
Yeah.
TV's Night Court passed. That was kind of a surprise one. So, I mean, all the news I'm seeing is either like really small stuff or kind of really sad stuff. So I'm going to try to keep it focused since we're talking about a video game movie today. That's what we're going to do in our feature review with Rampage. I found some video game related movie news, or at least tangentially related. So do you guys know? Yeah. Do you guys know the name Billy Mitchell?
Yes, I sure do. I'm looking forward to this news item.
Good. Billy Mitchell has been in several movies, a few movies, let's say. He's not an actor, though. He's been in some documentaries. Billy Mitchell is what you might call a professional gamer, an arcade gamer. And he's famous for holding lots of world records in some of the famous arcade games like Donkey Kong and Pac-Man and some of the various famous arcade games. Well, this week, the Guinness Book of World Records, he's always been a bit controversial, right? I remember hearing about him back when the movie The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, that's probably the most famous one people might know him for. It centered on this guy named Steve Wiebe, who was trying to break the record, Billy Mitchell's record in the King, in Donkey Kong. And and he was, they were supposedly challenged head to head. Billy Mitchell didn't show up, but he had these records and everybody was questioning his records, even in the movie. Well, as of now, today, this week, the Guinness Book of World Records has disqualified all of Billy Mitchell's high score records for Donkey Kong and Pac-Man.
Whoa.
Yeah, basically he's being taken off the record books. And they are obviously saying that because there's been allegations of his cheating for a long time, but apparently they've had enough evidence or accusations that Twin Galaxies, which I think is a company that made some of these arcade games, or is a platform company, decided to strip him of his scores, which is kind of odd. And they said that basically the scores he posted were achieved by playing what's called a game emulator and not actually on original equipment. And there's probably a lot of technicalities. You gaming guys may know a lot more about this than I do, but I did see the movie The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, the documentary. It was interesting, an interesting look at the world of competitive gaming. And it's just like anything else, just like sports or whatever. These people are really into what they do, and what they do good is play cabinet arcade video games. But I just thought this was interesting because I remembered the guy from the movie, and now that we're doing the Rampage movie, this thing's in the news. What do you guys know about this or think about this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a heck of a news story because I think a lot of people ended up following the Billy Mitchell story through King of Kong, which was one of those incredibly accessible documentaries that even people that wouldn't consider themselves like documentary people found themselves being able to latch on, because it was about arcade cabinet video games. And like, that's something we all kind of like, right? Everyone has those like fun moments, those nostalgic moments of like pouring quarter after quarter that may come up later in our review as well. This is particularly interesting because, yeah, Twin Galaxies, the organization that like runs the website and does all the tracking of these scores, there's been a little bit of buzz about this happening for years. In fact, there was another documentary that came out a few years ago called Man vs. Snake, which was about the Nibbler cabinet, but they also kind of touch a little bit on Billy Mitchell and that as well. There's this huge thing where you have to make sure that you're recreating the exact conditions of playing it on the arcade cabinet, because there's latency, those types of things. And when you're playing on an emulator, even though it's like, even if you're not cheating or like using cheats or whatever, even just the difference in how quick things refresh or how things load changes your ability to react to things and changes the way that you get scores and stuff. So the fact that they were able to figure out that this was being done and kind of retroactively strip the scores, I mean, it makes sense. It's a level playing field. I think he's also, I think I read somewhere where he's also banned from ever competing, like his scores will never be considered in the future again. So I mean, it's not just that his score was overridden. He was just like, they took whiteout to his name in the history books, you know, for good or for bad. Like any movie fan that enjoyed either of those two documentaries, I think this is news worth following.
And in a few years, guys, you know, a la Tanya Harding, we're going to get an I, Billy movie about this as well, I'm sure. So,
oh yeah, I mean, he's already been quoted as you know, responding to these allegations and this action of his name being removed, saying that, you know, he never did emulators. You know, he doesn't even have these emulators loaded. Blah 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 blah. He says he's disputing the fact that you know, because some of these scores are submitted on tape or you know, on just some kind of or have been submitted on tape at the time. And he would submit, you know, his gameplay and the scores on tape. And they're saying that, you know, this was done on an emulator. And he says that maybe the tapes were altered. And he says he wants to now see the original tapes. And so it's going to be a run and gun battle. I don't know what the heck's going on. I don't know if they're lining up for another movie or what.
I have a question. So I'm not a competitive gamer, but like, if this is like a competition for high scores or whatever, why don't they just have a Donkey Kong competition where they play on official machines that have been vetted versus like, oh, let me use my camcorder to videotape myself playing?
So they do that. Like there are events where they do that with different games where they have the cabinets. And a lot of times they're in conjunction with like a charity as well. Like they'll get these players out, try to set a high score with some of these cabinets. The Nibbler one, for example, was that's one of those endless games where you kind of keep going until you die and you can like earn extra lives and do all these different things. And you can play that cabinet for like, you know, 24 plus hours until you, so it's like kind of one of those marathon type things. You know, how long can you, you know, touch the car, you know, before passing out, you know, those types of things. It's like the last challenge on Survivor, Brad. So that's one of the ways that they do that, but that's not always an ideal circumstance because you have people like around you and you're not playing in, you know, necessarily in an environment that is like suitable for record breaking. So they allow home cabinet stuff, but they vet it quite a bit. You know, for those who may be kind of like, you know, why does this even matter? Like, this is just some like arcade cabinet guy. And again, it is just an arcade cabinet guy. And I don't know that it's necessarily like, you know, world shattering news, but this guy has made enough of a ripple in pop culture that we've actually seen a version of him in a movie recently. The Peter Dinklage character from Pixels was based very, very heavily off of Billy Mitchell. So if anyone's just like, who are we talking about? Like, imagine that character, kind of the way he came across and the way that's the reputation that Billy Mitchell has within the arcade gaming community.
Yeah.
Bummer town for Billy Mitchell. Wah, wah, wah. Well, guys, I got some show-stopping news real quick. Are you ready?
I am.
Speaking of people named Bill, guess who's in the house? Bill Harris from Green Screen of Death podcast.
Your brother from another mother.
Yay! Welcome, Bill. Hey, Bill.
Love that guy. Glad to have you with us, Bill. We had Adrian on, of course, a couple weeks ago. Bill, I think we got to get you on next. So let us know if there's a movie coming up you want to talk about that's not 4.5 hours long, that can only be found on a DVD Blu-ray that's $95 and can only be found on eBay.
Yeah. Hey, I was just telling Bill, I just actually listened to their latest episode dropped. They don't typically put out a show every week. Theirs is like every other week or something like that. And it had been like 3, maybe 4 weeks since their last episode. And I listened to the whole thing through, and it's great. People, if you're on here and you want to listen to another movie podcast, check these guys out. It's called The Green Screen of Death. But on this latest episode, Bill like pours his heart out in an honest way about how some of the movies have been so shitty this spring that he just did not want to record a podcast. But it was pretty awesome. It ended up being a really good show. They review, Ready Player One, Isle of Dogs, yeah, yep. And A Quiet Place. So all movies we've reviewed. So check out their reviews, compare them to ours. They do. Results will vary.
It's so interesting because I think we all have that. There's times where like when I watch like a movie that I absolutely love, of course I want to come in here and talk about it. And when I watch a movie that I absolutely hate, like because it's interesting, but like in a really bad way, I'm ready to come here. But there's, those movies that are like the perfect, like 1.5-star movie. It's bad, but kind of boringly bad. Sometimes we come into this and I'm just like, how are we going to fill an hour and a half? How are we going to do this? But there is something kind of magical about like once the ball gets rolling, once we start like the conversations, it's kind of like, oh yeah, this is why we're here. Like, I love that even those days where we're just not feeling it, like I feel like, the conversation starts to flow.
Definitely helps. Well, Bill says in the chat, thanks guys. You are our podcast brothers. Bill, we absolutely feel the same way about you guys. A big ol' heart symbol to show our love for you. Let's go on down to Will. Will, what have you got for movie news this week?
Yeah, so do you know that sequel to Mad Max Fury Road that we've been seeing all the previews and the trailers for?
The one we haven't been seeing anything for.
Correct, yes.
You mixed up your words, Will, I think.
No, so by now we should have seen a Mad Max Fury Road sequel. The movie came out in 2015 and was both a critical and a commercial success, with ideas for spin-offs for both the Mad Max character himself and Furiosa spinning out of it. So a sequel is inevitable. Now, of course, the last film took 3 years to make. So this is about when we'd start seeing something, right? Like they'd go into production, we'd start seeing something 2018. But the reason you've not seen a thing or heard a thing is there is this huge lawsuit that is holding up any movie sequels. So if you're holding out for the Fury Road sequel, keep holding out. There's no end in sight for this thing. The lawsuit itself is sort of like is a little bit of some dry, boring stuff. The George Miller, the director, his production company was supposed to get this like $9 million bonus and some of the proceeds from the film if they delivered under the $157 million budget. They ended up going over the budget, but it was Miller claims it was because the studio mandated some reshoots that were not their fault. And so it's this really like, who's supposed to pay for the reshoots? Who's not. The studio is also saying, hey, but we contracted and said it was supposed to be a 100-minute PG-13 movie, and you gave us a 120-minute R-rated movie, so you broke the contract. And of course, I think the R-rated part is what is part of what made it work so well. But either way, they are trapped in this like lawsuit right now, and until that gets resolved, there's no sequel, there's no spinoff, there's nothing else coming out of this, which is an absolute shame because I need to get back into this world like right now. And the earliest probably at this point, if the lawsuit resolved today, we'd probably be looking at a sequel in like 2021. So I don't know. This news bummed me out when I was reading up on it. How do you guys feel?
Yeah, man. If we wait any longer, we're going to be seeing Granny Furiosa out there. Like the little old lady Furiosa. Yeah, man. I remember 3 years ago sitting in the Paramount Theater in Austin, Texas, looking at George Miller up on the stage and him showing us they were preview clips from the new movie just before it came out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and when that movie came out, man, wow, that's still one of the best action movies to come out in the last 3 years easily.
I think we still have the reserved sign from his chair in the theater.
No, it was a reserve sign from Robert.
Oh, that was Rodriguez. That's
Robert
right.
Rodriguez, who was at that screening.
That's
yes.
right. Okay.
Yeah. But still, that was fantastic. Yeah, I mean, guys. I mean, we know that these movies, especially these big movies, are business. I mean, they're big business, and there's going to be contract disputes when there's that much money involved. As a fan, as a movie fan, I'm seriously bummed out, and I just want them to get this thing resolved, quickly, so that we can see, we can see the next movie. I was really excited for it. So yeah, I want to see him get it resolved. I'm not taking sides. Just make the fucking movie, and then, work out your deal during the next movie, whatever.
You gotta be careful too, because like the window of desire for a sequel could close on you. Like, you want to capitalize on the popularity of the first movie, which in itself was the first sequel in, God, how many years was it? Right. It sort of reinvigorated and relaunched this franchise with Tom Hardy now as Mad Max, and interest in a Furiosa sequel. Jim, I like what you mentioned about her being a granny. Maybe it'll be called like Nana Furiosa. I don't know. We'll see.
It comes off the tongue pretty well.
Yeah. But if it's another couple of years at least before they even like get this settled and, start getting into production on something, I mean, we'd be looking at like a 2024 release or something on a film.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that'd be like 9 years after Fury Road, which, I mean, that's a long time.
That's brutal. And part of that is like, okay, so maybe they can do a turnaround on it quicker this time. The 3 years was because it was such a grueling production, but at the same time, the fact that it was such a grueling production was because of how much practical they were doing. And that's the type of thing that I think would suit them well to go back to. And at the end of the day, like, they have to resolve this. One is the person that is creating and helming the product, and the other is the person that is paying for it. And unless those two people come together, there is no moving forward. They have to come to some sort of agreement. So it sucks that this is playing out in the courts. It sucks that this is keeping us from watching these characters out in the wasteland again. I think Wasteland is what they were thinking of calling the fifth one. Anyway, so I don't know. This is just bummer news. It's unfortunately, I know it's inside baseball, but it's just like, this is how these things have to resolve sometimes. You have to get the creative and the financial people all on the same page. But I just wish that it had happened with like Transformers 6 and not Mad Max.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wish we could just teach the world to sing all in a circle, drinking Coke and getting along. But I don't know. That rarely happens. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. Well, hey, we do have a movie to review, and we'll get to that here in just a second. My news item will be brief. I was looking up a little bit of information today about Rampage and came across something that I had no idea Warner Brothers had done. They put the original arcade game on the movie's website. You can actually go there right now and play the original Rampage. And Jim came home from work today, Will, and the first thing I had him do after I kissed him hello was, Jim.
Yep. Come over here, sit down, and play the old Rampage game. And he, I did it on the keyboard, and of course I wasn't at a console in an arcade, but yeah, it was pretty awesome. I played Lizzie. I played as Lizzie, the lizard, or the alligator, whatever it is. And it was fun. I got to smash some buildings and eat some people, and it was pretty awesome. So yeah, babe. I mean, you can go right to the website, right? And anybody can play this for free. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can put the link in the show notes if you've got the bug.
Yeah, I definitely should. Cause it was, it's fun. I mean, it's definitely something that could turn into a huge time waster if you're sitting at your computer.
What's great is like a lot of those old like Midway arcade games, and other companies too. Like they don't take a lot of juice to play, you know. So that you can have them on your website, you can play them on your iPad, you can play them on the go, you can play, you know. And I think there's something a lot of fun to be like just being able to like go back and re-experience these things that were so fun and had such a strong like nostalgic pull on us. Without having to burn through just like dozens upon dozens of quarters in the process. So yeah, this is awesome news.
Indeed.
Yeah, a lot of fun. I had never played the game before. Didn't know anything about it. As a matter of fact, I had to ask Brad and Will on the way to the movie theater, like, please tell me about this game. So in case it comes up in the movie, in case references come up in the movie, that I have some idea of what's going on. Luckily, I don't think I needed much of that. We'll get into that more, but yeah, I had never played. I had no idea.
Well, now we've punched your Rampage cherry out, Jim.
That's right. That's right. Definitely.
Just
between
the
game and the movie. Yeah, my cherry has been
punched.
Like,
is that
aged out?
What the fuck are you doing to cherries, Brad? Like,
aren't you mixing games up? Isn't there a game with cherries?
Well, there's
that Pac-Man.
That had cherry. I was just thinking of like Lizzie, like crawling up the building, like punching. You know what I mean? Like I was trying to mix my metaphors.
Unfortunately, the mix and I love the mixed metaphor. Just the visual that comes along with it is going to haunt my dreams.
You mean the visual that stems from that image?
Oh, Brad. Brad.
On that note, guys, we got a movie to review. How do we feel about getting down to it?
Yeah, these puns are the pits.
Wow. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm trying to figure out how to work in a maraschino reference.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking the same thing, but there ain't nothing there.
All right. Well, guys, before we officially launch our movie review, we're going to be talking about Rampage, spoiler free, for probably 10, 15 minutes or so. So if you haven't seen Rampage yet, you're kind of on the fence about it. There's 3 of us, so we'll give you 3 different opinions. Maybe you can kind of average them. Somehow that might help you decide if you want to see the film or not. And then we'll give you a fair warning before we open up the can of spoiler worms. And if you haven't seen the movie yet and you want to leave and come back for 20 minutes or so, you don't want to miss the plugs at the end, feel free. But we will protect your virginal innocence when it comes to this movie's plot. Guys, here we go. Our discussion of Rampage. All right, so Will, I know you're a huge fan of this game growing up. The movie may be a bit of a different experience. It'll be interesting to hear your thoughts, but do us a favor. Give us kind of a brief setup of the game. What's the game about? What's the movie about? Is there a good comparison there? How'd this work for you?
Absolutely. So I played the hell out of this arcade game. Rampage came out like in the mid 80s by Bally Midway. It was one of those like 3-player arcade cabinets, and you could either play as Ralph the giant werewolf thing, George the giant wolf, the giant ape, think kind of like King Kong, and Lizzie the giant lizard, think like Godzilla. And you played as these creatures, and you climbed buildings and smashed them and grabbed people and ate them and smashed tanks and helicopters and all of these different things. And you just earned points for the amount of damage you did on your rampage. So this film adaptation is borrows very, 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 very loosely from that premise. It stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and yes, I'm going to keep using The Rock, even though he's forsaken it, as Davis Okoye, and he's a guy who works with specifically with primates, but also sort of as a conservationist slash kind of like he takes out poachers and such.
He's a primatologist.
The primatologist, and he's worked primarily with George, a primate that he has rescued from poachers. The two have a bond, but one day, this evil genetic company has this thing go awry, and 3 different animals, the ones I just mentioned, become mutated and go on a rampage across Chicago, leaving only The Rock and his pecs to stand in their way.
And Negan. Don't forget Negan.
Negan, and you know, there's a few other people in this of note, but you know, yeah. So, anyways, the film borrows again very, very, very lightly. You have the 3 monsters, and they're represented, and they destroy buildings, and that's represented. There are a couple of small Easter egg things which I'll talk about in spoilers, but they are not things that are at all significant nor plot dependent. So, and that said, this type of arcade cabinet, like,
pretty basic.
It's
right?
pretty basic. So, you know, it's okay for them to have some to take some liberties and to flesh things out. Unfortunately, they didn't do that. The plot in this movie is threadbare. This film relies so heavily on the idea of Chekhov's gun. You know, if you introduce a thing earlier in the movie, it's going to come, you know, pay off later on. It does so blatantly and so on the nose that there's no surprise, there's no shock, there's no nothing that really happens in the film you can't kind of predict from the first few minutes of it. To his credit, Dwayne Johnson is ridiculously charismatic. And if there's one bright point in the movie, I would maybe say it's him, but not because of his character or not because of his acting or not because of any of those things. I think I just like him as a human being. And when he's on screen, like, I can't help but like be a little bit okay with that. But aside from that, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, as you mentioned, he plays Negan on The Walking Dead. He shows up and plays the Negan from The Walking Dead exactly here. You have a set of a brother and sister pair who play mustache twirling villains, and Malin Ackerman and Jake Lacey. And the 2 of them are just completely one-note, paper-thin villains that you don't care about. You have Naomi Harris show up as a geneticist, and she provides a little bit of some backstory to what's going on. I don't know. This is not a great movie. It's not an awful movie in that, like, I've seen worse this year. Like, when I get to my end of year list, this movie's not on my end of year like negative list. It's hovering close to it, but it's not all the way down there. Once the action does kick up in the kind of the last third of the movie where the monsters start fighting each other, there's a couple of cool beats there that are worth watching. That not worth the price of admission, I would say, but they were still neat. I just wanted to see more of that, and I wanted to see more out of the characters, and I wanted the plot to be, just have, thought through just a little bit more. I wanted more out of this movie. I didn't need a masterpiece. I just wanted something that was more than tepid, and unfortunately tepid's all I got. So not something that I would recommend at all, but maybe mileage will vary. Brad and Jim?
Yeah, maybe. First of all, it was great seeing this with you, Will. So I'm glad we got a chance to do that. And it's funny, like, whenever we see a movie together that we know we're going to be talking about on the show, it's like the car ride home is always like very quiet, whereas the movie is concerned. We're like, we don't want to blow our loads. Like, don't talk about it until the show. But we chatted a little bit yesterday about sort of the Chekhov's gun thing. And absolutely, you're right. We're going to get to that. We'll discuss that. But I will say, for me, this was a much more positive experience, I think, than the experience you had 2.5 feet away from me. I was really entertained by this. I had fun with it. I was not expecting this to be a cinematic masterpiece. I wasn't expecting this to be some, hugely phenomenal film. As video game movie adaptations go, I mean, I thought this was pretty decent. I've certainly seen a lot worse. Assassin's Creed. So,
Uprising.
Well, but that wasn't based on a video game originally.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, this was kind of a breath of fresh air where video game adaptation movies are concerned, which was nice because I really liked the new Tomb Raider recently as well. So it's kind of been cool to like have these video game movies kind of be tripping my trigger lately. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. Ugh, I love that guy. He totally saved Jumanji for me. He saved San Andreas for me. He'll probably save Skyscraper for me. I think that charisma and his big hunky muscles do carry a lot. But I mean, we had some other bright spots in this cast as well. Naomi Harris, who I adore. I love seeing her show up in anything.
You just like her because her name is Harris.
Well, there's that. It's like a Harris trifecta tonight.
Yeah.
We got Brad Harris on the show, Bill Harris in the chat, and Naomi Harris in the movie that we're talking about. But it was great to see her. And Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I'm so over The Walking Dead, you guys. Like, I haven't even watched the back half of this most recent season. And I was hearing stuff today about next season, and I'm just like, ugh, whatever. But I do like the guy. He's got some charisma too. A little weird though, like basically seeing the same exact character, just instead of a baseball bat, he's got a cowboy 6-shooter. Like, that was not a bright spot in the film for me. But from a visual standpoint, I'm really glad we got to see this on a really big screen. We saw this in the XD theater here at our local Cinemark. And that was nice seeing it there because we had the nice reclining footstool chairs. So you could kind of like just lay back and let this movie just fill your whole field of vision. And so...
Wait, Brad, did you just say fill your hole?
Fill your hole. He did say that.
I did.
Sorry to interrupt, but
that's the WHOL.
Different hole.
I mean, you could do the other thing in that theater too, I guess, if there's no one else.
Oof, my God.
But
get arrested and put on a list.
Right? That would not be good. That would be like one of those things where you have to rent out the theater for like $1 million and do your thing. But yeah, it was great seeing this on a big screen. Some really cool visual elements here. I think they did a pretty decent job with the CGI on these monsters, seeing them going at each other and damaging buildings. And the premise does vary a little bit from the game, which I also adored as a kid. We had a bet going into the movie as to how many buildings would get destroyed.
Has not yet been settled, by the way.
I've been scouring the internet today, you guys, and I haven't found substantial proof either way. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but it was interesting to me. One element I do want to talk about, ever since 9/11 happened, movies have really shied away from destroying lots of buildings anymore. Like even in movies like Batman v Superman or the Avengers movies, like they make such a big point when there is like a building that gets destroyed. They're like, oh, we just evacuated everybody, or oh, there's nobody on the island anymore. Like it's totally safe to like destroy these buildings. So I was kind of curious going into this movie when you have 3 giant fucking monsters show up downtown and start beating the shit out of each other. Like, how was that going to work? How many buildings were we going to see demolished? And I'll say for me, it was I don't know. It was interesting. So I'm anxious to talk more about that in spoilers, but this is a big recommend for me. If you're looking for something fun right now, kind of the soft start of the blockbuster movie season, I don't think you can go wrong here as long as you don't expect it to be like, I don't know, Warhorse or something. Like I think you'll be fine. Jim, how about you?
I don't know where I fall on this. I think I'm closer to you, Brad, in terms of my enjoyment of the movie. Going into this movie, I was pretty honest with myself about expectations. I'm like, if I have fun with this movie, I'm not expecting a lot. If I can just get some fun out of this movie, and it's got 3 giant monsters like battling, if I can get something out of that, anything else is gravy. And that's what the movie was for me, basically. It definitely cleared the bar. The things I liked about this movie, I liked the setup of the movie at the beginning. You get to know the character, Davis Okoye, kind of right off the bat. And in terms of, what is his character like? What makes him tick? His relationship with George. You get to know a little bit about George. And I like those scenes up front. I thought they were really effective in telling that part of the story. And then jump to the end or toward the end, third act. I definitely loved pretty much everything with the big giant animals. I thought that was well done. I thought the CGI was enough to make me suspend my disbelief, and without going, oh my God, that looks fucking terrible. And the action parts at the end were pretty good, even though the plot I thought was really clunky. It's a really clunky, simplified, like even roll your eyes in spots kind of plot. But the action within that plot, I thought was pretty good. And of course, I do like The Rock. I mean, that guy is like, man, I don't know. He plays pretty much the same character. I'm very close to the same character in all these movies, really, when you come right down to it. In the back of my mind, I'm saying, gee, I'd like to see what this guy could do with like a really great dramatic role or a quieter movie. But then I'm thinking about it and I'm like, I don't even know if he could pull that off. I don't know I don't know. It'd be like trying to fix a watch with a hammer. You know what I mean? Like, it just isn't going to work. But yeah, I this movie cleared my bar. I did enjoy it. I would recommend it. It's fun seeing it on the big screen. Just go in and I know this is cliche, but just go in and enjoy it for the movie it is. I think you're not going to get anything extra or extra special out of this movie. You're just not. You get what's advertised. It's pretty well done at that. There have been other movies that I've gone into this year, action movies like this, that have really let me down. This wasn't one of those. So yeah, I'm good on this movie. I think it's a recommend.
All right. Well, for a video game about monsters, hitting buildings and causing property damage and all that good stuff, as movies go, I wonder how hard it is to execute against those items. We're going to talk more about that coming up in spoilers. But guys, this is your chance. If you haven't seen Rampage yet, you don't want to be spoiled on the plot, go ahead and step away for 15 minutes if you're listening live. If you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay, i.e. iTunes, Stitcher Radio, feel free to use the handy dandy time index in the show notes and skip on ahead to plugs. But guys, spoilers aren't officially fair game. How important, this goes to Will. Will, how important was it to you that this movie really hit home and connect with the original video game elements? Like, did you feel personally invested in that? How did that go?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for a game that's fairly plot light, I didn't really need a lot of fan service or a lot of connection. All you really need to make a Rampage movie, and for it to be true to the source material, is you need to have a giant lizard, a giant monkey, and a giant wolf, and you need to have them destroy buildings. Anything beyond that is just gravy. So we got that. In terms of faithfulness, it's actually pretty dang faithful, even though the game itself, each one of them has a different thing that caused them. One has an experimental vitamin, one has this a radioactive lake, and one of them has this food additive. So all of them have their own unique backstory as to why they changed into these monster things, whereas here it was more streamlined. Genetic engineering is bad, you guys. And to its credit, it threw in a couple of additional things that were some fun fan service that didn't need to be there, but it was fine that it was. For example, I mentioned Malin Ackerman. She's playing one of the two Wyden siblings who were the evil geneticists who kind of caused all of this problem. And she, at the end, is wearing this red dress and is grabbed by George and shoved into his mouth. And that's the actual Rampage posters. A lot of them would have the monkey's fist going through the actual logo, holding a damsel wearing a red dress. So just in terms of in terms of Easter eggs, that was cool enough. I think my problem was, again, I'm not necessarily tied to needing anything all I want to see is a good movie, right? All I want to see is a good movie. If you are very true to the source material, or if you veer very far from the source material, I don't care, as long as it's entertaining and as long as it's justified within the movie, within the new medium, and as long as it just, you know, hits the highlights. It hits the highlights, but the movie itself just did not do it for me. I think the Wyden twins were, or siblings, I guess, were one of the worst parts. These villains were pretty freaking awful, guys.
Yeah, they were bad.
And Malin Ackerman, I like her in other things. You know, she was in, she played Nancy in The Final Girls, which is one of my favorite horror movie parodies of recent years. And Jake Lacey, the one that played kind of the Weasley brother, you know, he had roles in like Carol and Miss Sloane and Obvious Child, and you know, he was also in The Office, but you know, that was in the bad season. But you know, he has the potential to be pretty decent as well. But man, these roles were pretty rough.
Yeah, the villain roles were pretty disposable. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the Negan character. I thought there was a lot of Negan, we call him Negan, but in the movie, his name was Harvey Russell, and he was a government. He worked for OGA, which is other government agency, kind of black ops, you know, leader in this movie. And he comes across as a real hard ass, but eventually his edge kind of wears off after a little while, right? And we find out that he's not quite the hard ass jerk that really he is, right? At first we think he's going to, oh man, this is going to be the real villain of the movie. But it's interesting that they kind of softened his character and almost kind of turned him into an ally at some point in the movie. And that was interesting, although, I mean, that kind of character, and we've seen Jeffrey Dean Morgan play the Negan character, as much more hard-edged, much more sadistic than this character was. So when we say Negan, yeah, he kind of looks like Negan. He talks like Negan. He's a bit hard-edged, but not quite as much in this movie. Did you guys think so?
I think for me, the thing that what he captured, like, it's not that he played exactly the same character. And, you know, when we were talking beforehand, you know, it's not that he just is completely one note here. But the Negan character in Walking Dead has this, like, kind of twinkling joke in his eye with whatever he says. Like, there's like everything he says both seems like a charming joke and also like tinged with some menace. And I felt like we got to see that with this character too. This was a charming / dangerous guy, just with a different affectation, and who is more aligned with the protagonist that I guess Negan tends to be. I think I wasn't a huge fan of this character here, though, mainly because I feel like at a certain point in the movie, they ran out of things for him to really do, and yet they kept throwing him in doing things. And I felt like it just sort of like, it was sort of like running out the clock on the movie. Like, let's cut away from the action and see what Harvey Russell or what Jeffrey Dean Morgan is doing now. So I really wish, honestly, there's a spot where they could have killed this character off and fairly early on. And, granted, this isn't the type of movie this is, but, I kind of wish it had the balls to have just killed him.
Well, but they didn't because of plot reasons, right? They needed somebody to help with the plot later on, right?
But even that, though, like the stuff that he has to do is so later on, he helps them escape by giving them the keys to the helicopter. But The Rock and Naomi Harris are like punching out guards and like they're
already going to get
they're already kicking ass. So like the fact that he has the keys to the helicopter adds nothing. He gets some computers, which are great. And then at a certain point, Naomi Harris has to go on this quest to like go get a satellite phone so that she can call him to call off this bomb strike. And it's this thing. And instead of finding the satellite phone, he's literally standing exactly where she goes. So it's not even like a quest that she has to go on. It's just like, I'm looking for a way to get in touch with, oh, there's the guy. And so I don't really know that his character was written into the movie because they wanted to write him into the movie, but he didn't actually do anything in terms of moving the plot along that, The Rock couldn't have just done himself.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I mentioned, like my favorite parts of the movie, my least favorite parts of the movie involved pretty much all of that plot stuff that got us from, okay, now we have giant fucking angry animals to the end where they're all, in the city. All of that stuff, like from plot point to plot point, especially with the military stuff. I mean, God, that stuff was so fucking boring. And like you see that in every giant monster movie. Oh my God, we're going to drop this bomb. I'm going to shoot these missiles. And it's just, it's so clunky. And I'm not saying it was poorly done here. It's just been done to death. And it's just kind of boring in a movie where you're saying, come on, let's get to the animals again. I want to see what's going on at the heart of this movie, not this other shit that I don't care about.
Is that a thing? Because maybe it is like second act kaiju movie slump. Like that was like the Godzilla movie that came out.
Oh, yeah.
Like one of my biggest problems with that film was the second act of it was
with
just
the bomb on the train and all that shit.
Like you cut that out entirely. You give me just the first part that included Bryant and Cranston, and the third part that involved like monsters smashing things, and just eliminate the middle part entirely. I probably have a different view of that movie. If you give me just the Rock interacting with George here, and then a couple of things happen, and now we have a bunch of like destroy Chicago scenes. Sorry, Chicago fans, I don't want to actually destroy the city, just in the movie. But if you cut out like just all of the humans are the real threat bullshit, like maybe I'm more positive on the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot like the Transformers movies to me too. Like anytime you have to have this like human subplot going on concurrently with like the main event that you're really there to see, which is giant robots like fucking, warring with each other. I always feel like those human elements pull away from those things that I really like paid money to go see. At least with The Rock, you get kind of like that funny like Rock charisma ride out of it, and that adds something. But the counterbalance to that is if it was just a movie full of nothing but CGI monsters destroying buildings, how much would that movie cost to make? And would that movie actually get made as a result, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but like I said, I mean, they set up the relationship between the primatologist Davis, the Rock's character, and George very well. And so you cared for that relationship. And then kind of about halfway through the movie, you're like, I miss that relationship. Like George is on his rampage and there's no interaction really. I mean, yeah, The Rock is on top of buildings yelling at George, stop, whatever. And of course, George isn't stopping. But you missed. I wish they maybe had done something more with that, done away with some of that other second half BS, which brings me to the ending of this movie. So at the end of the movie, the monsters are, fighting. I think the wolf bites it first because Lizzie snaps him in two or something because the two monsters start fighting. And then Lizzie gets blown up by some shit. I don't know. They put a bomb inside it and blow it up. I forget exactly. It's like, okay, we know we're going to kill that. And then George is at the end. He's impaled and he's shot and he falls over and he dies. And it's kind of a bittersweet moment in the movie. A ballsier movie might have ended it that way with a little bit of a prologue, with The Rock's character kind of grieving over all this mess. But not this movie. Nope. Because we set up the character of George at the beginning of the movie as kind of a animal jokester, we get kind of a joke death scene at the end, which I don't like the fact that it took all those stakes away for me. I don't know. I don't like movies that pull their punches like that. And Will, you and I had this discussion on the way home. I know why this movie probably has to do that. maybe so people will walk out of the theater feeling happy because they got to see George again, animated, telling his fucking jokes. And, you know, everybody's happy, and it's, you know, it's a feel good summer movie. So,
but it's also franchise building too. Like, you know, this movie, like as video game movies go, has been, and again, that's a caveat, as video game movies go, has been well received, like more so than other video game movies. And so by having George, your hero kaiju character, still alive, this company is still out there. There's people still out there who can probably recreate these experiments. You know, if it does well enough, they're probably hedging their bets and they want to leave room open. You know what I mean? For a sequel. So I think that's a part of it too.
It's just the way they go about it, I think, is what's cheap. And they set it up in such a way that you kind of like they wrote themselves into a corner where they had to do this. You know, they start writing the jokes about or him, you know, playing these pranks on The Rock's character,
giving him the finger,
you know, giving him the finger, and like playing jokes and stuff like that. So that when he does, like, air quotes, die there at the end, you know it's going to be a joke. You know you're going to see him flip the bird, like all of that. Like, and so you're just buying time. I don't mind, like, I don't necessarily need the movie to kill off the George character. Like, I don't need that for stakes. But I feel that it's very cheap. Almost any time you do the character is dead, let's all mourn over them. Oh, wait, he's actually secretly alive. Like, almost like 99% of the time when you do that, it is a cheap, manipulative way to get the audience to like, oh, now I'm sad, but now I'm happy again. And those aren't real stakes. That's artificial bullshit. Now, I think that this movie itself has a tone problem because it doesn't quite know what to make of its main character. And this is a world where
George or Davis.
Because this is a world where humans are remarkably human. Like, you know, you get crushed, you die. You know, people are afraid of these giant monsters. The military is useless to do anything. And that's fine. But you've got, once it's time to start fighting, there's a few things that that Dwayne Johnson's character does that are like, they don't feel like they belong in this movie. They're like, it's almost like superhero stuff. For example, he gets shot in the stomach, guys.
Yeah.
He gets shot in the stomach, and it literally stops him for about 2 minutes until he is like running and sprinting and fighting
till he's needed to save the female.
Yeah, which is 2 minutes later. Like, she has to do a thing, and then he comes back out holding his side just to give us some lip service, and then it's never addressed again. He gets battered and beaten around, and like the most injury he has at the end of this movie is like a couple of blood smears on him. And again, it's okay to have that type of thing in like a superhero movie because you're playing up this world where people are larger than life, where people have these powers, where people are supposed to kind of be iconic or supposed to be more human than human. This is a world where the monsters are so incredibly dangerous and lethal that humans need to look feeble next to them, you know, as we are, so that we can be, you know, terrified of what's happening. And when they do this sort of stuff with The Rock, with him just running and jumping and kicking ass, and like Bill says it here in chat, you know, there's a spot where The Rock and George are running into battle at the end next to each other, and it's comical. Like, it doesn't fit tonally here. I wish that, you know, and it's because you cast The Rock. You don't cast The Rock in a movie and have him just sort of like cower in the corner. And so maybe I'm expecting them to do too many things with the stuff that they've got. But unfortunately, I don't like the way the puzzle pieces fit together in this movie. It made a world where there are 4 like gargantuan, like superhuman beasts in this film. And one of them just happens to be The Rock.
Actually, there were 5. Nobody's giving credit to the giant rat at the rat in space.
Yeah, giant rat in space. We do get giant rat in space.
In space.
He was the granddaddy of the giant animals.
I got a question for you guys. In terms of there was one like Chekhov's gun thing that I feel like they did sort of the opposite. They did poorly the opposite way. There's this thing where you find out that the evil supervillain twins have this pet rat. And so this pet rat is always in the scenes. They're like handing it off, like as they're escaping, they're making sure the pet rat in the cage is safe. As the villain, like the guy is like released to go outside and get crushed. I keep calling him the Negan character, but whatever. Make sure that he gets the rat from him safely. And so I told Jim as the credits rolled, like, we need to just wait because just watch. There's the inevitable stinger. We're going to see that rat in the cage and we're going to see it slightly larger. And it's going to be like, oh, there's more of this stuff. No stinger, nothing else with that rat again. It's just this thing that keeps getting handed back and forth for
I couldn't figure out what that. I thought I might have missed something. Like the rat had some special fucking DNA thing going on that they were trying to preserve. I no idea why they were fucking carting that rat around.
Well, it was interesting to me because in the video game, you can co-op, right? So you can work together to destroy the city. So part of me was almost thinking like, wait a second, the brother and sister, they know they're going to be arrested or whatever. Maybe they dose the rat with this stuff and it like gets really big, really, really fast. And the three monsters have to team up to stop the rat, kind of like a Godzilla and, Mothra and Anguirus teaming up to stop King Ghidorah. Right. But no, that didn't happen. But I got excited for a second. I'm like, oh, it's coming. Co-op, it's going to happen. No, not so much.
And whether it be that or whether like the rat is just a third thing that George has to fight or whatever, as much as they introduced this damn rat, they should have done something with him because any of our ideas and any of our possible things are more interesting than what they ended up doing with the rat, which is forgetting to do anything with him.
So I don't know who Sumo Slow Dancer is in our chat.
Hi, John.
But he came up with a good one for our rat in the cage discussion. So despite all the Rampage, he's still just a rat in a cage. And I'm like, so that's the in joke that went right over my head. Bravo, Rampage, bravo.
Oh, goodness, man. Well, guys, do we have much more to say about Rampage?
I mean, I was kind of getting a little excited at one point when The Rock explained how he rescued George when he was a small baby gorilla from poachers. And I thought the movie might have maybe tried to gun down and had some kind of, animal preservation kind of message, but it really didn't. It never really got there. And I don't know. I think my hopes had just gotten up. Like my ears perked up a little bit. Like, oh, this is going to be cool. How are they going to work this in? But they never really did. It did contribute to the bond between the character of George and the character of Davis. But that's what it was for. It was just that.
Yeah, I think there is more that you could have done with the conservation, preservation type stuff. Even if it's just, I don't necessarily know what it would be, but just something more than what we've got. What it really did was set up more that Dwayne Johnson is a badass because she asks, like, how did you, the Naomi Harris character asks, what happened? And he says, I saw George, he's an albino. He was hiding under a truck. The poachers had just killed his family.
They were butchering the other animals.
They shot at me. They missed. I shot back. I didn't. And what that established is I am a badass who's good at fighting. And the thing is you don't necessarily need to establish that The Rock, whenever we see him in a movie, that he is a badass who is good at fighting. Because when you cast that particular guy, it just kind of comes with the territory, right? It's just like, all right, this is what he's going to do.
Mm-hmm. And that's what he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was pretty much it. I mean, not much else, really.
Hey, but next time we get to see him fight a skyscraper.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's the next Rock movie, I think. skyscraper.
Well, we actually saw a trailer for that movie, like in front of this one,
Of course.
and of course, right? And there's all this hubbub, of course, because the poster for the movie, like, it's impossible for The Rock to make the jump from the girder to the window.
It's become a meme at this point.
It kind of has.
Well, wait a minute, but he has a bionic leg, doesn't he?
Well, that's
See, it's what you're not getting.
It's not a bionic leg. He has a prosthetic leg.
Oh,
there's a bit of a difference there.
I mixed the two up. Sorry.
Yeah, those aren't exactly the same thing. But if we're doing video game logic, maybe he has a special double jump or rocket boots or something like that. No, what was so interesting was we watched him in the trailer, like basically running along some scaffolding as a building's like it being damaged in the background. And here in Rampage, there's a spot where he's running across a building that's over on its side, across some like scaffolding and like some girders and stuff like that as things are collapsing around. And out of context, if you didn't see like the lizard scales in the background, it could have been it could have been like a shot from a skyscraper. I just thought it was so weird, like seeing those two things back to back. I want to see a supercut because we have that, and we also have San Andreas, which you'd mentioned earlier, Brad.
Yes.
Like, we can put together a supercut of just The Rock and like buildings smashing all around. Like I want to see that.
That would be awesome. But it takes us back to the final question before we wrap up this discussion. How many buildings were actually destroyed? I still maintain that it was just one building, like one skyscraper fully destroyed. Are you guys sticking to your higher totals?
So we all did a poll beforehand, like how many buildings do you think got smashed? Brad guessed 4. I guessed 8. Jim guessed 11. And so we had some debate afterwards because and I think it all comes down to definition of like destroyed building.
What's
and
destroyed
such.
Building?
There were some shots to me that looked like there was a lot more destruction. So I walked out of the movie going like, dang, like Jim smoked us. Like I thought it was like higher than 11.
Lizzie went through one building, like in one side and out the other, which I thought was awesome. I thought that was an awesome shot.
But the building was still standing. It's just a couple floors were all messed up.
It's still destroyed. Like
they're gonna patch that up. They're just gonna throw some duct tape and drywall in there.
Just gonna get Bondo on it. It'll be fine.
The landlord will be out on Tuesday with his tool belt. It'll be fine.
Oh, man. Well, good or bad, this movie afforded us a great opportunity, Will, to see a fun movie with you and have a great conversation. So whether you liked it, loved it, hated it, I love that movies continue to bring us together like this. So definitely some good stuff.
I'll always be thankful of this movie for that very reason.
Yes. There you go.
Well, there you go. Well, guys, let's do some quick plugs as we look to wrap things up. My plug is actually about a TV show, but the TV show stemmed from a movie, so I feel like it counts. Jim, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but it might make your guilty pleasure heart happy. Season 7 of Catfish is out. We apparently missed the whole season.
It's guilty pleasure time.
It is available to binge watch through the MTV app right now. We've been watching Catfish since the show started 7 years ago. And the premise of the show, for anyone who's not familiar, there was a documentary that came out about this guy, Neve Schulman, who basically was in an online romance with this person, thought it was a certain woman based on pictures and stuff traded over the internet. When he finally caught up to this girl and they met in person, turns out wasn't her at all, totally somebody different. But this term catfish has become like the vernacular that's used online now. Anytime anyone pretends to be someone they're not. In our community, we've had various friends who've had their pictures stolen and someone pretends to be them. It's happened to me and some other folks. And so you just call it being catfished. And so Jim and I love to watch the show and see all the craziness that ensues. So If that sounds interesting to you, you don't have to like have watched the show from the very beginning. But basically, every episode sort of sets up this couple, and eventually they get to meet up. And sometimes it actually is who they say they are. They end up being the real people. Oftentimes, that's not actually the case. But sometimes they still get together anyway. So really interesting. If you like the premise of that, check out Catfish on MTV.
Awesome.
And Jim, what have you
watched? I can't wait to watch the next season, by the way.
Maybe we'll watch that and Lost in Space tonight.
Maybe. I have another TV show. So I had caught some news that a TV show that I didn't even really know existed, shamefully, with one of my favorite actress comedians was in, Tig Notaro. She's I like her comedy style. She's very dry, sarcastic kind of comedy. She was in a show, a very autobiographical show. It's more of a dramedy than a comedy. It about, families and life in general. And mainly about her life growing up in, I think it's southern Gulfport, Louisiana, or is it Biloxi, Mississippi? I'm not sure. It's called One Mississippi. I saw the news that the show was actually canceled. It was an Amazon Prime TV show. And it got canceled after its season 3. So there's only 2 seasons of it. Each season is only 6 episodes of a half hour long. So I was able to binge through 2 seasons of the whole show over the weekend, and I really enjoyed it. It's quite interesting. They tackle some really heavy and topical and important stuff, from child sexual abuse to sexual identity. As far as, coming out as gay, Tig Notaro is gay. And I really appreciate it. It's on Amazon Prime right now. If you have it, check it out. It's a quick watch. It's called One Mississippi, and it stars Tig Notaro.
All right. Awesome. And Will, what have you got this week?
So the thing that I'd like to plug is one that, Jim, you and I both really enjoyed it, but it is now out in at least limited release. So it's not in all theaters, but it's in some. And it's the film The Writer, which we saw at South by Southwest. So it's not available for everybody yet, but this weekend it just started creeping its way out there. This is a drama film by director Chloe Zhao. And it's about this cowboy. He breaks and rides horses at the kind of the rodeo, and he gets injured. He falls off his horse, gets injured, and he has to deal with the fact that he is, this thing that he loves, he may not have access to if he keeps going down that path. He has to deal with kind of the family, all the different family dynamics that he has to help support while dealing with this injury. It's a really, really good drama. One of the better ones of the year. And it's the lead 3 actors on this are the Jandros, Brady, Tim, and Lily Jandro, a set of a real life family, all of which are untrained actors. Like the lead of this, who has to do so much, is a dude who's like, this isn't like, he's not an actor. And it just goes to show the director pulled such an amazing performance out of him and out of all of the cast to make this work. It's called The Rider, like riding a horse, The Rider. Again, it's in limited, so it's not going to be in your multiplex, but I'm hoping that it expands and that more people get a chance to see it, because it's that damn good.
Yeah, I've wanted to see this movie since it came out at Sundance or something last year when it premiered, and I heard about it. And I got to see it at South by, and man, it's amazing. I love this movie. It's a really quiet movie. It's not it doesn't stack up action wise against Rampage, but it's a really quiet movie. I love the performances. Love the way this movie is shot. It's beautiful. My two favorite movies this year so far are both horse movies. So I'll just leave it at that.
I guess you aren't horsing around.
No.
Huh. I don't know what the other one is. I'm gonna have to do some thinking. That's awesome though.
Okay. I might plug that one next week.
All right. Awesome. Well, we've got one final plug from our honorary co-host tonight, Bill Harris, who's been in the house with us from Green Screen to Death podcast. He says, you were never really here, the new Lynn Ramsey film. He says it's a beast of a film. It's in limited right now, but hot damn, is it a breath of fresh air in this bad, stinky stretch of movies. I've not yet seen that one, Bill, but I do trust your judgment. So definitely gonna have to check that one out, babe.
Yeah, that's a Joaquin Phoenix starring role. Bill, you bitch. I don't know how you got to see this, but yeah, this one's definitely at the top of my gotta see list for this year. Certainly not here yet in the desert.
Same directors who did We Need to Talk About Kevin, which is just an it actually came out in Austin this weekend, and of course I wasn't in Austin to see it, and I've got Super Troopers tomorrow night, and I've got Super Troopers tomorrow night and Anything on Wednesday, so I may not be able to catch this until next week, which is a bummer because this has been at the absolute top of my list for a bit.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Well,
thanks, Bill.
I'll get to catch it soon. Definitely, Bill. Thank you. Well, that wraps us up for this week, everybody. It's been fun hanging out with you guys. Thank you to everyone who was hanging out with us in the live chat tonight. Thank you as well to those of you who continue to check out the show week after week on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, on our website. And guys, we've had an uptick in people coming to YouTube to watch replays of the show. So for those of you who are just getting the audio version, you're missing half the fun. Feel free to check it out on YouTube as well. Bobby Miller says, great show tonight. Bobby, so glad that you were here with us.
Hugs to Bobby.
Thanks, Bobby.
Appreciate having you here with us anytime, Bobby. Have a good one. See you later, everybody. Guys, real quick, where can people find you online if they want to talk movies? Jim, go.
Find me at Twitter at JJPOUTWEST. That's JJP out west. Also find me on Facebook, of course, at Jim Pugliafico.
Rock on. Will, how about you?
Yeah, check me out on Twitter at Whatever Cove. I'm on Facebook, William Lindis. Just send me a message first so that I know how you found me. Also look for me on Letterboxd. I go by William Lindis there because, surprise, it's my name.
All right, and you can find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm the one that probably has a bunch of Bear, Chubb, and Chaser friends in common with you. You can also find me on Twitter at iBradPro. We'll see y'all next week, everybody. Take care. I almost said we'll see you Negan week. That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't, unless we end up doing a Walking Dead cast, which at this point, not looking likely.
No, not happening. Bye, everybody. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.